In this video, I'm going to go over a C program for finding the length of the largest word in a string. So first we'll make our string. We'll say car s is equal to this is the way. And right now the largest word in there is going to be this at 4 characters. And so we'll write a function to find the length of the largest word. We'll say int largest word, and it'll accept a string as an argument, and it'll return the length of the largest word. That's why it's returning an int. And then we'll provide a definition of the function down here. Now I'm going to include string.h because this library includes all kinds of helpful functions for working with strings, including a function to find the length of a string that we can use, and another function called strchr that allows us to check if a character is in a string. It's going to turn out that's useful as well. So first we'll make this len variable, and we'll set it equal to the length of the string by calling the strlen function to get the length of the string. And the way we're going to solve this problem is we're going to step through this string one character at a time. And we're going to have an outer loop that's going to be focused on whether we've reached the end of the string or not. And then we're going to have 2 inner loops. And the first inner loop is going to step through a word. The second inner loop is going to step through whatever separates the words. And we're going to say what separates a word initially is a space and potentially a period. Because we could have something like this, like period, space, again. And this would be what we'd say is a delimiter. Like these characters here are a delimiter. They separate this word from this word. And we're going to have one loop that's focused on identifying words and counting how many characters they're made up of, and another loop that's going to be skipping ahead through these delimiters. So let's make those loops now, and we'll make these variables to help us with them. So first we're going to have a count for the number of characters in each word. We're going to have the maximum length we've found for a word so far. And we can set it off as -1 initially. So that way any word will be longer than that. And then we're going to have this character array. We're going to say char non-words is equal to space and period. And the idea here is this is going to be the characters that I'm going to be considering to be delimiters, things that can break up words, things that signify the division of 2 words, where you could have like some period, some space, and that would mean that we're delineating 2 words at that point, that they're being broken up by those characters. We could add some other things in here too. We could say comma, because like comma could separate things too, right? You could have like this is the comma space the way again, right? This is also valid, right, in English. So we'll say comma. We could also say semicolon. We could say new line and tab. We could add other stuff there too, but we'll leave it there. And then we're going to make an index variable that's going to help us step through this string one character at a time. So we'll say here int I is equal to 0. And this is going to be like our index variable into the string. And we'll say while I is less than len, we're going to have 2 inner loops now. And the first inner loop is going to identify words. It's going to step through words. And we're going to keep track of the count of the letters in each word. So we'll say here while I is less than len, if strchr non-words s at I doesn't equal null, then break. Otherwise, we're going to increment I. So what's going on here is this is the loop that's going to identify each word. And we're also going to have it keep track of a count for the length of each word. So we're also going to say here count plus plus, and before this loop runs, we're going to say count is equal to 0. So what's going on here is this loop is going to step through each word. So how does it step through each word? How does it know to stop when it reaches the end of a word? So that's where we're using this non-words array here. So these are the characters that we consider to be the end of a word. They signify the end of a word. And so what we're saying here is check for this character that we're looking at right now in the string, because we're stepping through the characters one at a time, right? And we're saying if this function doesn't return null, break. So the way this function works, strchr, is that if it does find this character in this string here, then it returns the pointer to that character in this string here. And so what we're doing here by saying if it doesn't equal null, break, we're saying that if this character is found in this array here, break. And if this character is found in this array here, we do want to break because that means we've reached the end of the word, right? So that's when we're going to break. And then at this point, we can compare count to the max. And if the count of this word is greater than the max we've found so far, we want to make that the new max. So we'll say here, if count is greater than max, then the new max should be equal to count. Okay, and the last thing we got to do is we've got to find the next word. We want to step through any of these delimiter characters that we're saying are separating words. We want to step through them until we reach the next word and then continue from there. So let's do that now. We'll say here, while I is less than length. So with both of these loops here, we're also keeping a check that we're not going over the length of the string itself. We always want to do that. And then in this case here, we're going to say if strchr non-words s at I is equal to null, we're going to break. So we're kind of doing the opposite of the loop above, and that actually kind of makes sense if you think about what we're doing here. So with this loop here, we're trying to step through delimiter characters until we reach a non-delimiter character that signifies the start of a word, right? A character that's basically not one of these. So here we're saying that if strchr non-words s at I is equal to null, that means that this character can't be found in here. So if this character that we're looking at in the string currently can't be found in our delimiter character set here, then this is going to return null. And that's what we want. That's what we want. Is we want to stop at that point, because that means that if we reached a character that's not one of these, we must have reached the beginning of a word. Okay? So at that point, we stop. So after we've done this, after we've continually looked at a word, counted its length, compared it to the max, updated the max word length we found, and then stepped through the delimiter, after we've done all this, max should then contain the length of the longest word in our string. So we'll return max. So then we can test this function out, and we'll see if we made any errors along the way. That's always possible. So we'll say int largest length is equal to, and we'll say largest word, call it with s, and then we'll print out this result here. We'll say printf %d/n largest length. Okay, save that, and then we'll compile it over here, and then we'll run it, and I get largest length of 5, and that makes sense because the largest word in there is again, and that's 5. We could maybe add something else. We could say, like, we can make up a word, doesn't really matter. We could say there's, maybe we'll delete something here and make it a little trickier. So this should now be largest word of 6. So we'll compile it, we'll run it, and we get a largest word of 6. And so we figured out how to find the maximum word length in a string in C. Check out portfoliocourses.com, where we'll help you build a portfolio that will impress employers, including courses to help you develop C programming projects.